The rain hadn't let up for days. It hammered the city relentlessly, flooding streets and turning calm neighborhoods into chaotic, muddy battlegrounds. For Marcus, a 12-year-old boy from the roughest part of town, the storm was just another obstacle in an already challenging life. The cracked windows of his apartment let in drafts of cold air, and the leaky roof meant every room was dotted with buckets catching rainwater. But Marcus wasn't one to complain. He had learned long ago that surviving meant focusing on what needed to be done. That afternoon, he had been sent to the corner store to grab a loaf of bread and some eggs, whatever his mom could scrape together from her dwindling savings. Marcus pulled his hoodie tighter against the downpour as he made his way down the flooded street, the cold rain soaking through his sneakers. He noticed a luxury car stalled in the rising water nearby, but he paid it no mind. Cars like that didn't belong here, and whoever owned it wouldn't be looking for help from someone like him. But then, a sound stopped him in his tracks. A faint cry barely audible over the rain and the rushing water. Marcus's heart skipped a beat as he scanned the street. At first, he thought it might just be the wind, but then he heard it again. This time, it was unmistakably a child's cry. His eyes darted toward the flooded alleyway up ahead, and that's when he saw it. A stroller. It was caught in the current, spinning wildly as the water dragged it toward a storm drain. Inside, a small child clung to the sides, their terrified wails piercing through the rain. Marcus froze. His mind raced as he looked around, hoping someone else would step in. But the street was empty. The water was rising fast, and the stroller tipped dangerously as it neared the drain. "I can't just leave him," Marcus muttered to himself, dropping his groceries onto the sidewalk. Without a second thought, he plunged into the icy water, his sneakers slipping on the slick pavement as he fought against the current. The water tugged at him with every step, threatening to sweep him off his feet. But Marcus kept going. His eyes stayed locked on the stroller as it teetered closer to the edge. Just as it tipped, Marcus lunged forward, grabbing the handle and pulling it upright. The child's wide, tear-streaked eyes met Marcus's. "It's okay," Marcus said, his voice shaking from the cold and adrenaline. "I've got you now." With the stroller firmly in his grip, Marcus struggled to make his way back to the sidewalk. The water pushed against him, but he didn't let go. Step by step, he moved forward until he finally reached solid ground. He pulled the child from the stroller, cradling the shivering boy against his chest. "W here is your family?" Marcus asked softly, but the child just sobbed, unable to form words. Looking around, Marcus realized there was no one in sight. The luxury car he had seen earlier was still stalled in the distance, its door hanging open. Marcus's chest tightened as a terrible thought crossed his mind. What if the child's parents had been swept away by the flood? Marcus didn't have time to think. He wrapped the boy in his hoodie, trying to keep him warm as he carried him home. His mother, exhausted from working a double shift, gasped when she saw him walk through the door with the child in his arms. "Marcus, what on earth?" she asked, rushing over. "I found him," Marcus explained. "He was in the flood, alone." His mother looked at the boy, her expression softening. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, wrapping the child in a blanket. For the rest of the evening, they cared for the boy, feeding him what little food they had and trying to soothe his cries. Marcus stayed close, holding the child's hand as he drifted to sleep. The next morning, everything changed. Marcus had gone to the corner store to buy fresh milk when he saw the news playing on the small television behind the counter. The words on the screen made his heart stop. "Millionaire's son missing during flood-owned $1 million reward for finder." The broadcast showed a photo of the missing boy, and Marcus's stomach dropped. It was him, the child he had saved. Dropping the milk, Marcus sprinted home. Bursting through the door, he grabbed the remote and turned on the television, showing his mother the news. "We have to call them," Marcus said, his voice trembling. His mother hesitated, fear flashing across her face. "Do you think they'll believe us? People like that. They don't trust people like us." Marcus shook his head. "They have to. He's their son, and they're offering a reward. Mom, we could finally get out of this place." Hours later, The sound of tires screeching to a stop echoed through the quiet street as a sleek, black car pulled up outside the small apartment building. The car door flew open, and a man in an expensive suit stepped out, followed closely by a woman whose face was etched with worry. Their usually composed appearances were replaced by pale, strained expressions as their eyes darted around, searching desperately. Then they saw him, their son, cradled safely in Marcus's arms. The mother let out a choked cry of relief and ran toward them, her heels clattering against the pavement. She wrapped her arms around her boy, holding him so tightly it was as if she feared he might slip away again. Tears streamed down her face as she kissed his forehead, murmuring words of comfort and love. The father followed close behind, his hands trembling as he placed them on his son's shoulders, as if to assure himself that the boy was truly there, unharmed. He looked at Marcus, his eyes glistening with gratitude and emotion. "You saved him," he said, his voice breaking. "You brought our son back to us." Marcus, humble as ever, shook his head. "I just did what anyone should do," he replied quietly. But the father wasn't having it. "No," the man insisted, his tone firm yet filled with admiration. "You did more than that. You risked everything to bring him back. People talk about heroes, but today we met one." The mother, still clutching her son, turned to Marcus, her voice soft but full of sincerity. "We can never repay you for this," she said, her gratitude spilling out with every word. But the father was determined to try. "The reward," he said, his voice resolute. "It's yours, every cent of it. $1 million isn't enough for what you've done, but it's a start." The following day, the news spread like wildfire. The millionaire didn't just quietly transfer the money, he made a public announcement. Standing before a crowd of reporters and cameras, he recounted the story of Marcus's courage and selflessness. "This man didn't just save my son," he said, his voice strong. "He reminded us all of the good that still exists in this world. That kind of bravery deserves recognition." He ended with a declaration that left everyone speechless. "The entire $1 million reward is going to Marcus and his family. He's a hero, and he deserves every bit of it." For Marcus, everything changed overnight. The reward money did more than just lift his family out of poverty, it gave them a new beginning. They moved out of their cramped apartment and into a modest but comfortable home in a safer neighborhood. His siblings, who had been struggling to balance school and part-time jobs, could finally focus on their education. His mother, who had worked tirelessly to keep food on the table, finally had the chance to rest and smile without worry. But the impact went far beyond material changes. News of Marcus's bravery spread throughout the community, and people began to see him in a different light. The boy who had once been overlooked and underestimated was now celebrated as a symbol of courage and selflessness. Neighbors, who had never spoken to him before, now stopped to shake his hand, calling him a hero. Local schools invited him to speak to their students, sharing his story of how an ordinary act of kindness could ripple outward and create extraordinary change. Yet, despite the recognition, Marcus remained humble. He often told people, "I didn't do it for the reward. I just did what anyone should do." But those who heard his story knew better. His courage wasn't just an instinct. It was a choice to act when others might not have. Marcus's story lit a spark in the community. People began organizing fundraisers for families affected by the flood, and neighbors who had once kept to themselves started looking out for one another. His bravery became a reminder that even in the darkest moments, here is always room for hope, compassion, and action. For Marcus, the reward wasn't just the money or the recognition, it was knowing that his actions had made a difference. He had proven to himself and the world that even someone who starts with nothing can still make an impact that lasts forever.